Today on the EdexLive Podcast, we are joined by a thinker who has shaped how organizations innovate and how individuals build meaningful careers. Dr. Pavan Soni, innovation evangelist, author, founder of Inflexion Point, and one of India's leading voices on design thinking and career strategy. From helping 180 plus organizations unlock creativity to writing best-selling books that guide thousands of professionals, Pavan brings a rare balance of academic depth and real-world clarity. Hi sir, welcome to EdexLive. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much.
Sir, you often say a career should be designed, not found. What's that first step a young person should take to understand what they truly want from their career?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the first thing is to understand passion. We are sitting in a world where there are a lot of career options available. About 20, 30 years back, people were not even thinking that you can stay at home all your day and still make money. People did not imagine that one could be an entrepreneur without employing people. Or people could not imagine that one could become a multi-millionaire just by putting videos on YouTube. All these options are available to us. Cloud kitchen, working from home, etc. Which means that because suddenly the possibilities have opened up, it's a very interesting time in human career and human life to really look inward as to what your passion is. And once you anchor your career on your passion instead of what you ought to do versus what you enjoy doing and what you're good at, you can open up a lot of possibilities. So the starting point has to be identifying your passion. And in my opinion, what is passionate is something that you do without feeling tired. So for example, if you are a person who likes creating content, so this is your passion and you can do this endlessly with different levels of challenges with different type of people, and you will keep experimenting with what a good content should look like. And once you are able to identify your passion, then you build mastery around the passion by either reading or by formal or informal education. And once you've done so, then you go ahead and take the next step and try to identify what are the commercial opportunities. So the starting point has to be passion.
So your book Design Your Career encourages people to think in decades, not years. Why is long-term thinking so important for young professionals entering a tense job market?
As humans, we often over expect what can happen in a year. We are around the corner of the year. And as the New Year resolutions happen, people expect that they will be able to change themselves dramatically in a matter of 1 year. But by the 15th of January, they realize that nothing much has changed, right? Whether it is about physical fitness or about relationships or about self-development. So a year goes by very quickly, but a decade is a long period of time. So instead of thinking at an annual level, if you can look at a decadal level, and you can say that in this decade, I want to be a good employee. In the next decade, I want to explore entrepreneurship. And in a decade after that, perhaps I would like to get into spirituality. So when you break your life into decades, so roughly after studying, etc., one is left with about 5 decades of life. So if you can have a decade-wise plan, that each decade what you want to achieve, not only that you are able to look at things more objectively, but also you are much more realistic and you are able to balance the decade-wise planning with your other obligations of life, which is to do with your family, with your parents, your children, and your different stages of life, whatever societal commitments that you have. So I think an year goes by very quickly, but a decade is something more enduring. And putting yourself in a decade-wise cadence is a much more realistic thing to do. And it gives you a bit more long-term thinking possibilities. So that's what I advocate.
So we are in a world obsessed with quick wins. How can students build patience for deep work, meaningful growth, and long-term compounding?
I think the first thing that students need to understand is that their self-worth need not be measured on how good they look on social media. Because the current generation seems to be excessively obsessed with the social equity, and that too on a very narrow perspective, which is how they look on social media. So once they understand that others' opinion is not so instrumental in your life and your career after all, you can still stand out without necessarily alienating people in your life. You can still have your own mind without necessarily upsetting people. So once you understand that, and it takes a long time for people to realize and appreciate the importance of being okay by not belonging. And that is very difficult, by the way, because every sneeze is posted on social media. Who is going out with who, what dress you are wearing, what food you are eating, what courses you are taking, everything is out there. And slowly people are realizing that it is not really required. Because when you put up something, you expect people to take notice. But then that notice is for a very small amount of time, and very quickly they double down on what are they doing instead of showing interest in what you have done. So if you're able to dissociate yourself and disengage yourself from the vagaries of people's opinion, is when the real learning and real development starts. So that's the first thing, okay, which is to have your internal locus of development. And the second is to understand that the younger generation has been given a longer life as compared to older generation. With every passing year, the life expectancy in India is actually going up, thanks to medical care, thanks to better lifestyle, thanks to better access to medicine and antibiotics. Now, we are living long lives, but are we living meaningful lives? Because now, whatever people used to do at the age of 30, people are not doing at the age of 40, because 40 is a new 30. And people are starting companies at the age of 60. Am I right? Which means that the children should understand that they have a long life in front of them. Even if they do not become somebody at the age of 22 or 25 or even 30, it's not the end of life. And I've seen so many people taking drastic measures because they could not somehow meet their own expectations at the age of 22. Haven't we seen children committing suicide at various colleges in our country, at premium institutes, mind it? People committing suicide at coaching centers. They think that if I'm not able to make a cut at a certain institute at the age of 17 or 18, the life is over for me. I think that's very myopic. So what students need to understand is that, first of all, their self-worth is not measured on social media. That's the first thing. The second thing is to understand that life is really long. Okay, I've seen so many people trying to rush into their life, and by the age of 40, they are done. They're done physically. Their physical health is not supporting them. They are done socially. They've alienated people in their life. They have heart problems. They have diabetes, hypertension at the age of 40. Now, what's the point of that life? What have you achieved? You may have achieved a bank balance, but you're still struggling at a very fundamental level. Something that people enjoyed, a life that people enjoyed a couple of decades back. You're not able to enjoy that life, right? With all the money that you have. So it's a wake-up call for people around us, and trying to understand that it's okay not to achieve things early in life. This whole phenomena that you want to be a young millionaire by the age of 30, or you want to start a company by the age of 25, I think that's fake. We need to just slow down, recalibrate our efforts, and invest into things which are much more fundamental. And I think the three fundamental things is, number one is health. That's the most fundamental thing, because if the health is gone, a huge amount of what you could possibly do is already over. The second aspect is to do with your knowledge. Be a continuous learner. Okay. And the third thing which I would like to invoke is your spiritual growth. And I don't think spirituality is something that you should reserve only at the age of 60. When nothing works, spirituality works. That's not the way. If you're not mindful of the spiritual dimension of your life as you're going through your life, you would have a lot of external success, but you will have no internal success. And haven't we seen people who have achieved so much in their life and still they're hollow, still they're wanting, still they're dissatisfied? It's because they never opened the spiritual dimension of their life. So even at a school level, at a college level, it's a very good time for people to get introduced to the spiritual dimension, that we are one with each other, we are one with nature, and that life is not one-dimensional progress. It has to be a slightly more holistic approach. So that's what the youngsters need to keep in mind.
So with AI transforming industries, what skills will protect and elevate a student's career in next 10 to 15 years?
I think the most enduring skill which has been instrumental in the past and will be instrumental going forward is problem solving. 100 years back, problem solving was the important skill. And 100 years from now, problem solving will be important skill. So if a student can be a good problem solver, and what I mean by problem solving is the first step, which is about understanding the problem, instead of being told what the problem is. So for example, all our studies and all our education, we've been given a question and we have to give an answer. Now, suddenly life does not give you a question. Life gives you a situation. And in the situation, you have to identify what is the question which is worth solving. And of the several questions that you have to prioritize the question and then come up with a solution. So the most enduring skill is problem solving skill, which is to do with critical thinking and creative thinking. And if I can add to critical thinking, so critical thinking is about understanding the problem and creative thinking is about solving the problem. And if I can add to these two dimensions, the third dimension could possibly be empathy. Empathy means to be able to understand other people's point of view. And I believe that machines cannot be empathetic. Machines are intelligent. There is no doubt about it. For example, right now, as we are having the conversation, there is some AI engine that can transcribe the conversation in the real time. But the AI engine can never ever substitute you or me from an empathetic perspective. So I think if people can develop empathy, people can develop critical skills, which is to question things, don't take the given wisdom hands down, and to be able to look at things more creatively. I guess these are three skills that are going to put us in a good state in the world of AI.
Sir, you have spent years helping organizations building innovation cultures. In your view, what is the single biggest misconception people still have about creativity and design thinking?
The big misconception that people have is that creativity is innate and it cannot be developed. Whenever you talk of creativity, we conjure up in our head the images of Albert Einstein or a Pablo Picasso or some great person like a Da Vinci. We are not able to understand that creativity is a daily affair. On a day-to-day basis, we can be creative, right? In the way I'm cooking food at the kitchen, I can be creative. The way I'm drafting an email, I can be creative. The way I'm organizing my day or my room, the way I'm able to look at the meetings, the way I'm able to plan my vacation, everything is an avenue for creativity. So that's the first thing, that we need to understand that creativity is not magical, except in the hindsight. Creativity only in the hindsight is magical. So as you are going through the motions of creativity, one needs to appreciate that creativity is highly accessible. We can all be creative in our day-to-day basis, and we need to be creative on a day-to-day basis. That's another very, very important thing. So organizations must understand that creativity is not fluke, it's not a flash, it's a practice that can be rigorously cultivated. And we have seen organizations in Germany, in Japan, in South Korea, in Israel, and in many other Western countries, in Singapore also, where creativity is inculcated as a part of the course curriculum at school level, creative problem solving. So, right at the organization level also, if we can understand that creativity is nothing more and nothing less than a skill which can be cultivated, where people can be trained, where puzzles can be given and problems can be given for people to apply, I think we'll be able to bring about a sea change.
So, your research at IIM Bangalore explores how organizations nurture creativity. With today's hybrid and remote work culture, what are the biggest threats and opportunities for creative collaboration?
At IIM Bangalore, where I did my PhD and where I continue to teach also, one of my focus areas has been about the right conditions in which one can be creative. And I believe that creativity requires a lot of solitary time, my time, alone time. In a hyper connected world where you're always online, where you're supposed to be joining meetings, where you're supposed to be live, you never get or you seldom get your time, isolation. And history is evident of the fact that no creation came out without the person being alone. When you need inspiration, you have to have people around you. But when you need synthesis, you need to be by yourself, all alone. And that's why solitary walks, people walk for kilometers together. People spend a lot of time just being in isolation, cutting themselves from across the world. Like George Orwell wrote his famous book 1984 on an island. He was cut off from the mainstream and he sat in an island in which there was no running water, there was no running electricity. And yet he could write one of the most famous books of all time, 1984. So history has shown us enough and more evidence that creativity is not possible if you're not alone. And in a world where you are expected to be connected with a lot of people, being there in the thick of the things, you never get time for isolation. And even the extrovert people who are rather recharged around people, they also need a time to synthesize their thoughts. Suppose I attend a conference where I listen to 10, 15 speakers. Don't you think that I need time to come back and consolidate and come up with my own theory basis? Otherwise, I'm just a chatterbox. My mind is full of ideas, but nothing original coming out of it. So that's a risk that people are running into in a hyper-connected world. The solitary time is missing.
So, you have designed your own career in decades. A being employee in your 20s, researcher in your 30s, entrepreneur in your 40s, and now author and coach. What can listeners learn from this intentional evolution? Was it intentional in first place?
Yeah, it was intentional. I'll definitely say it was intentional. For example, as I'm talking to you right now, I'm very sure that going forward, I would like to dedicate myself onto the path of authoring. And maybe things can change after 10 years. Maybe I may not turn out to be a good author. Something else might pique my interest. But the critical thing is you need to be intentional about it. And that's why the word which I'm trying to again and again use is called design and not chance. After sleeping, Suppose somebody lives till the age of 75. Sleeping takes away around 22 years of your life. For a solid 22 years of your life, you are sleeping. And after sleeping, perhaps the second best thing that you occupied with is working, right? So working comes only next to sleeping. There are people who spend more time at work than with their children. Am I right? Isn't that right? More time at work than with their children. Now, if work is such a big part of your life, you can't leave it to chance. You can't leave it to the benevolence of your supervisor or your HR or some bot. You need to be able to take charge of it. So, what I have discovered in my life is that the only default of life is death. It's the only default of life. If there is life, there has to be death. Job, marriage, children, house, 2 BHK car, nothing is mandatory. Nothing is mandatory in life. The only thing mandatory in life is death. You can't cheat death. Between life and death, nothing is mandatory. Everything is optional. So try to understand that there is no obligation that if you have studied, you have to work. If you have worked, you have to get promoted. If you get promoted, you need to have people below you. Why? Why do you have to do those things? If I like to be a solo entrepreneur, I'm okay. If as an entrepreneur, I just want to have a very small amount of business, I don't want to scale my business and add more people, it's okay. As an author, if I want to write about very specific type of books, it's okay. There is nothing which says that an author ought to do these things or an employee ought to do these things. So as Indians, we often fall for those recipes or those templates or those cookie cutters that as an author, you should do this. As an employee, you should do these, the 10 hacks or the 10 steps. I think as an audience, if you can, instead of following those advices, including what I'm trying to give you now, if you can look inward and focus on what your life priorities are, I think you'll be in a very good shape.
So, what are the 3 essential steps to designing a 50-year career?
3 things which I often hold very dear to me. The first is physical fitness. Whatever may be said and done, there will be a day where you will have money, but you may not have health. And as Dalai Lama very famously says, that humans are a very funny creature because we spend a lot of health making money and then money making health. Okay. So the first is physical fitness. There's no excuse. The second thing is called as mental toughness. What I mean by mental toughness is you should be able to take insult in your life, able to take abuse in your life. So for example, when I'm sharing my perspective, somebody may not agree with it. And I'm okay with that. What's the problem? People may agree, people may not agree. I'm absolutely okay. I'm absolutely okay people saying that what nonsense was this. It's okay. What is not okay is for me not to express myself. That is not okay. Okay. That's called mental toughness. As you try to do things in your life, you will end up polarizing your audience. Either they'll love you or they'll hate you. And we have seen world leaders, we have seen business people, we have seen sportsmen polarizing the world. Every sportsman end up polarizing the world. Either there's a goat for somebody, and for somebody he is just about somebody that they can't stand. The second thing. So physical fitness, mental toughness. And the third thing is called as intellectual honesty. Intellectual honesty means you should at every point of time know what you don't know, right? So this whole philosophy of fake it till you make it, I don't believe in it. Because even if you fake it till you make it, by the end of it all, you're still fake. You're not there. You're not the person. You're not being. So I think if you can be intellectually superbly honest and say that, hey, I don't know this, and I think this is important for me, let me just sit down, take a book and read about it. Okay, in the last meeting, people asked me a question and I was in a very powerful position so that I do not feel like answering the question, but now I can't duck it anymore. I have to sit down and answer that question. Develop the content. So if you can focus on these 3 things, I think you can have a much more enduring career.
So, for students who are listening to this podcast, who wants to innovate, experiment, and design intentional careers, what is one practice they should start this week that will compound over years?
One of the critical practices that I would strongly advocate is the ability to be a self-learner. Because I have discovered that the reason why I'm able to keep my perspectives a bit fresh is because I'm continuously able to learn by not necessarily getting into formal education, but by surrounding myself with intelligent people, having useful conversations, and having lots of books, by listening to interesting podcasts or biographies, or trying to expose myself to interesting constructs. I'm able to be a continuous learner. So at a very early age, if you can develop the ability to learn at your own, instead of some teacher teaching you or somebody breathing down your neck or somebody trying to evaluate you. So instead of giving the rein of learning to somebody else's hand, you have to keep it in your hand so that you are able to be ahead of yourself all the time. And the only thing that should matter to people is that, am I better today than what I was yesterday? Or am I worse today than what I was yesterday? I think that is the only thing that matters in life. If there was something that used to make me angry yesterday and the same thing doesn't make me angry today, I have evolved, right? So that is the only parameter which I think matters. And you are then a lifelong learner. You are not a student just till about 2025. You are a student for the rest of your life.
So my final question is, what are you authoring right now?
I'm writing my fourth book, and this is on innovation culture. That's what the book is about. I'm done with about 7,000 odd words, which I need to write about 90,000 words. So I'm long way off, but I'm enjoying every bit of it because a book writing is an absolutely meditative experience for me. I go into researching, reading, synthesizing, thinking about it. So it's a great experience to write. And at the same time, I'm also writing a fiction. So it's my first fiction book. So I'm dabbling in the world of fiction. I'm trying to see if I can be a fiction writer as well. So I'm writing 2 books parallelly. It's a corporate satire. Yeah, it's a corporate satire. I have seen the fakeness of the corporate world from a very close quarter, and I can call it out. I think the corporate world is full of stupidity at times, and if we can just about call the stupidity out and really do serious work, we will all be in a better shape. So that's what I'm trying to call. And since I'm not financially dependent on a single corporate, I can take a chance.
So all the best for your work, sir. It was a pleasure talking to you. We had a great insight. Thank you for being on EdexLive.
Oh, so great discussion. Very good set of questions. Well curated. All the best. Take care then. Bye.
Dr. Pavan Soni's ideas reminds us that creativity is a discipline, innovation is a mindset, and a meaningful career is something we design step by step, decade by decade. If you enjoyed this episode, follow EdexLive for more conversations. Until next time, keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep designing your journey.